Yes, y'all. It's another week, another dose of the Boyd. Coming from Duval. That's right. Up at the top of Florida, we have, as usual, Seprock Beats on the beats. This is a fresh, brand new one. I have a link to his Bandcamp. However, I don't think this track is on it. So, hey. Special, exclusive. That's right. All right. This camera going. Welcome to the Hegemony episode, or Hegemony. I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't even know why I called it that. Honestly, the word sort of popped up in my mind just because. I guess let's look at what the word means, and I'll explain why it popped into my mind. Sorry, I'm not really prepared for, I was thinking like maybe I would, I don't know, like have something like decently put together or like prepared like a presentation almost, but nah, you don't really get that. You're going to get sort of a on the fly kind of thing. That's all right. Homegrown. Let's see what. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. I want to thank you guys for joining. Looks like we got a couple folks on YouTube, one person joining on Facebook. Sort of weird that here I am just sort of deciding that I'm going to make a show. So look at that. We've got a viewership of 3. That means you're very, very unique in all of the world. Superfan Mike, what's up? We have Mike, Superfan Mike, on the live chat. Remember, you can jump in and discuss on the live chat. You can also Skype in. There's a Skype link in the description. So a couple things. Let me pull it. Let me do something. So we got last week. I guess before we jump into hegemony, let's talk about last week. We talked about reparations. That was a it's a hot topic, and people probably have feelings about it that they didn't share because they didn't want to get into argument. Because a lot about what that is, that whole thing. I mean, it's such a mess that people are really going at it with how they feel about stuff, and sometimes it's like. People tie their identity into some of these positions. And, what we try to do at the Boyd is we try to flesh out the truth outside of that identity while also keeping the truth of the identity. The identity matters. Sometimes, depending on who you are, the world will treat you different. Sometimes the world will treat you different because of how you look or how you act, how you seem at first glance to people. Sometimes. What was I looking at? Oh, yeah. So, anyway, we're talking about, look, we got Superfan Chris. What's up? Yo, welcome to the show. Well, looks like we got our Superfans on. Hopefully we get some other folks. Looks like we lost our Facebook person. Sorry, Facebook person, for disappointing you there. But I want to pull up something for you guys. Like I said, I really didn't. I just, instead of really putting some stuff together, you know what I did? I just got this fresh track from Seprock, and I was like, you know what? I got to figure out a way to get the track on the show. So that's what happened. Okay, here we go. Mike Polakowski. I think I can say his name. I mean, this is a public show, and he responded to a public show. This is a long response, but here we go, guys. So you can actually read this response for yourself on the YouTube channel. So in the archives, it's just last week, so it's the one that's not live. So you're watching the live show right now. But if you're watching this in the archives in the future or listening in the future, just look for the reparations one. It's reparations ? And there's a comment in there. And so let me get the camera switched over, the view switched over so you guys can see. what I've been talking about. Right, here we go. Oh no. Oh, hold on. Abort. Abort. Oh God. Technical difficulties. All right, hold on. Getting this. I am starting to get a. What do you call it? Infinity screen. All right. Sorry. My brain is not good at multitasking. Let me do this. That's why someday, if anybody wants has some extra time and you're in the Duval area and want to be the live broadcast production person who does this stuff while I just opine about shit, that would be great. Let's see here. Okay. And as we get Patreon people, maybe we could pay you too. I say we like it's more than one person. Okay, here we go. You guys can, some of you guys that are watching this can read for yourself. And I will go ahead and read off some stuff for the folks listening in the audio only. Here we go from Mike Polakowski. I'm sorry to say that this was a pretty clueless mess. First off, reparations is law. When the Japanese were given reparations, it only applied to those victims who were in the camps. For those who died first, the family got nothing. For the Jews, if their relative was murdered, the immediate family was eligible, but again, not for descendants. When the Civil War ended, Southern slave owners were stripped of billions. The problem is the government should have compensated those owners for their slaves. Well, let's pause there for a moment. Oh God. What? Why did that happen? Hold on. Dang it. This stupid thing. Yeah. All right, here we go. Here's this thing. Right. So here, a quick Google search. Oh, so super simplistic and sort of silly and embarrassing to show on a show. Hold on. Let me try to clean this up a little bit. Because it's all it is a super simple Google search about this topic. Being sarcastic here. Here we go. I'm just going to make it a little bit more presentable. So here we go. I'm going to read it to you. On April 16th, 1862, President Lincoln signed the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act. The law prohibited slavery in the district, forcing its 900-odd slave owners to free their slaves, with government paying owners an average of about $300 for each. Now, whether or not the quote-unquote value was marked to whatever they consider to be market rate, quote-unquote, doesn't matter, right? Let's get back to his commentary. So I don't know that there's really a point there. But anyway, now, here's the thing. If a I don't know, it's a little bit tricky to it's a different situation where it's hard to find an analogy because a civil war wasn't fought over certain. I mean, there's you got to think about something that's worth fighting a civil war over, more or less. So I'll try my best to pull a metaphor or simile out of my ass real quick. All right, so it's I feel like it's almost like saying that someone caught trafficking humans should or trafficking people, right? Human trafficking, whatever, should be compensated for the potential value of the humans they were trafficking once they're caught and the humans are taken away from them. You know what I mean? That's sort of like where that seems to be. That's the kind of logic I'm feeling out of that. So you don't get to do that kind of thing. But okay, whatever. Still, the situation where a group of people based on race and nothing else, so they had no control over that. Based on that race, they were subjugated and also, it was enforced by violence. And then we go through Jim Crow era. It's just simply a part of our history, right? It's like, what the crazy thing is, being white, passing, right? I'm half white, so and I look white, and so what does that mean? Well, that means that white people are comfortable around me. So sometimes they let the guard down, as in they have to be guarded, because if they seem racist, at least society's moved to a point where if you're racist, you get shunned and nobody wants to get canceled, right? And so sometimes there's some, things that I've heard white people say around other white people that I wouldn't hear them say around non-white people. I mean, and it probably goes with other races too. Whatever. I'm sure everybody is doing it, and whatever. I'm just saying that I know that there's a sort of consensus out there with some folks that that the government should have compensated people for their slaves and all that crazy stuff. So anyway, what is it? Let's see. This is something that is not. This should be a moot point, but whatever. I mean, and the thing is with with slavery and the institution of Jim Crow and all of these things and the history of racism, it's just something that's part of the history. People get riled up and tie their identity to it as if they're supposed to be guilty of it, like it's some infraction that they did, right? Like I said, like there's a lot of white people that take it personally, like that black people feel that there should be reparations based on race and descendancy because the government instituted a situation based on race and descendancy. If you were a slave born of a slave, you were a slave. You could be sold off. You were property. So it is something, an institution that was held up by the government to enforce upon other people. Those people should be able to seek retribution through the government for the crimes committed by the government, in my opinion, right? So, I mean, if he's got a rebuttal for that, if anybody has a rebuttal for it, then okay. But I'm just saying I don't take it personally that I didn't do anything with it, but I'm like, dang, they didn't do anything with it either. Their family lineage didn't have anything to do with it either, right? But yet here we are. So like, how do we make it right? It's unfortunate that it falls on our shoulders. It's unfortunate that it falls on our children's shoulders because of the lack of foresight and the racism and the vitriol of our forefathers. We just have to face it. Our forefathers were the mob boss. And sometimes, as much as the mob boss might love you, sometimes they're just fucking assholes, right? They might love their kids, but they're fucking assholes. Could be. I mean, shit, I don't really hang around some mob bosses, but people that hang around with mob bosses could tell you that those guys can be assholes when they need to be assholes, right? So anyway. All right, whatever. Let's go on. Do blacks have to pay for their part of the Civil War? What? It shouldn't have. I mean, this is like, again, it's like saying, do crime victims have to pay? Should they have to pay for to compensate the police for saving them from the crime? The criminal. It's just weird stuff. I mean, I don't know. What is also forgotten is the fact that poor whites often had it worse than slaves. Oh my God. Imagine having to compete with free labor. Oh my God. Imagine being free to roam the land and terrorize the natives and steal their stuff. Oh my God. To compete with free labor. Oh, imagine. Right. And by the way, hey, a slave, you have to keep alive. You have to keep it healthy. You have to keep this human being sheltered and all of that stuff to protect your investment. Guess what? When you go to wage slavery instead of chattel slavery, you can get paid less than $5, or you could get paid whatever they want. I mean, if there was no minimum wage, people would be paying less than minimum wage, and people can't even live on minimum wage. And so people already qualifying for government assistance living on minimum wage, and people would, already that people would pay less than minimum wage if they could pay less than minimum wage, which means that if there was no government program to keep you alive, basically you're just useful until you die, and then someone else will take your spot. and you'll get paid whatever that little menial shit is till you die. And then eventually they'll raise the wages up after everyone dies and there's enough demand for labor, etc. God forbid they automate anything and then we need less people and then everyone just can fucking die. And then there'll be like 20 people that own all the automated shit and everyone can just die and it's all robots and 20 people. Right? That's basically the future that some people want. Okay. I don't know about this guy, but do blacks have to, what the hell? Right. What is also forgotten is, oh yeah, had it worse. Free land. There's reasons slaves didn't get any free land. They should have got some free land. However, by 1910, blacks had purchased 16 million acres. Well, good for them, right? It was lost through crop failures and Great Depression. I'm sure nothing had to do with any bombings by whites who were jealous about what they were doing. We didn't see any kind of crazy shit happen where white people went into black business districts and burned the shit down and looted it and all that. You look it up in history. I'm not going to go through and name them all. They exist. So you can Google it. Simple. Take some time. Go look it up. Today it's about 1 million acres. So is this a do-over? Again, this is lacking all kinds of historical context. It's just silly shit, man. It's just, I don't know. All right. 12 years after entering college, white men have paid off 44% of student loan balance on average, according to analysis released Thursday by Demos, a left-leaning think tank. For white women, that share drops to 28%. For black borrowers, the picture is even bleaker. Black women see their loan balance actually grow 13% on average 12 years after leaving school, while black men see their balances grow 11%. All right. Okay. So that might be something that's happening on superficially. You could see these things happening, but what does that mean? That doesn't necessarily mean that black people shouldn't have access to education. In fact, how about this? Let's forget student loans because let's have free state and or federal style education for college, and we only have to worry about the debt, right? And how do I know? With the recent scandals in the last few years about how Wells Fargo and other lending institutions lend at higher rates to black people than they do other races, there's just because the rates, if the rate's higher, the payments are higher. So that means their default rate could be higher, et cetera. And the length of term could have to be longer to make the payments affordable, et cetera, because they're getting a higher interest rate. So there's an extra amount put onto certain folks in our society that doesn't seem to be put on certain other folks. And it just seems natural to me because there was a hegemony of culture, of power, of many things that have shaped our society, and we still see shadows of that. It still exists. Rules and law don't change hearts and minds, right? Remember, if the Second Amendment was repealed today, do you think the gun owners would say, "Oh, you're right, government, here's my guns"? No, the rule of law does not change their heart and mind. The racists, just because segregation has been removed from the law books, their hearts and minds did not change on that day. And they didn't change the way they talked about others when they talked about them in front of their children. They didn't change the way they felt when they saw this other race just because the book said to change the way you act on the outside, or who you let in or who you don't let out, or who sits in this part of the bus, who drinks in this water fountain, who looked at who lady, who whistled at who, and whatever, right? It's I don't know, crazy shit, right? Anyway, this is the reason redlining is nonsense. Blacks do not pay back loans, so why would anyone loan them money? again, this is just a convoluted way of looking at something without actually spending the time to analyze the historical context of what the hell actually happened in material reality. Like, we have to remember material reality. That's sort of the thing that we really should do to seek the truth. All right, so let me do this thing, because I'm getting sort of confused with this whole display thing. So let's see what's going on with the chat. I'm trying to get this going back again. All right, so doesn't look like we got some extra people on the YouTube channel. So what do you guys think about the commentary? Do you agree, disagree? I've given my 2 cents along the way. So what do you say? I have a weird feeling that there might be some info coming from Facebook. Let's see if we have any comments. Sometimes we get these, like, drive-by commentaries, which I miss, and I think I need to make sure to check for those. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you are you have some type of thought of this, or maybe if you haven't thought about it, maybe you're thinking about it now. All right, here we go. Superfan Chris says, thank you for breaking down this guy's disgraceful diatribe. So he does not agree with this Michael fellow. And by the way, let me do a couple things here. All right, hold on. Let me bring this. So there you go. That's a response to that particular comment about last week's show. So, that is someone who, thank you very much for tuning in. Apparently you and I do not see things the same way, do not see the world the same way, and neither does Chris. Actually, let me adjust this so it makes more sense. All right, here we go. Hegemony. See, there's 2 ways to say it. You can emphasis on the first syllable or the second syllable, right? So hegemony, or hegemony. Either way, right? So what is that? Here it is. It's a noun: leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. Right. Wikipedia, the wonderful resource, but it's a collective resource that is sort of a cool proof that we want to work together, and someone always likes to be the expert about something. Here we go. Hegemony, or hegemony, either way, right? Political, economic, or military predominance or control of one state over others. So the hegemon is the dominant state. And so if you have the cultural or social prominence or ascendancy, right, group within a society or milieu, right, that really, so really you could look at it as an imperial hegemony, as in like an empire. The United States has hegemony over the entire earth, basically, right? We dominate, basically, point blank, right? And so we have a hegemony over the world. Or you could look at, like, white supremacy had a hegemony over our social construction of what it was to just be American. Had some racism built into it. It was written in the Constitution, etc. So we have to consider those things when we are looking at the way that our state was created, or as our country was created, why people in our very own country have certain attitudes about their own countrymen. And a lot of that has to do with the hegemony of thought and of societal consciousness or milieu, right? That is pervasive, right? So, for instance, we had a situation where, um, all through American history, there's been some tone of racism and you know, some some representation therein. Now, in the last few decades, it's been a cultural shift, and it's sort of like a pendulum swing. And we'll still see a lot of resistance. Like I said, rules and laws don't change hearts and minds, so we're going to see resistance to any kind of movement like that. Um, but we are seeing it win out. That more and more people are less and less racist. Uh, Sort of. I mean, now you're starting to see people nitpicking at each other, like Cubans that don't like Puerto Ricans, or Dominicans that don't like either of them, and da da da. And stuff like that. It's sort of weird, or like, I don't know. I mean, the whole light skin versus dark skin, black folks. That's just like, what the hell? That kind of shit is like, nah. We need to be more class conscious and understand that there is a temptation for people with money, because money is power, people with money to take advantage of people that don't have money. And we always have to remember that. And so as people become more and more desperate, and pay, remember, pay just happens to be, because this is the nature of the world. Typically, the compensation one receives is inversely proportionate to your desperation. Tell me, if you're desperate, will you do crazy shit for very little money? Probably. People around the world right now do some crazy shit for very little money. Some people are coerced through violence to do some crazy shit. And that's the kind of world we live in. So, anyway, yeah. Crazy world that we're living in. Sort of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, hegemony. I just sort of was thinking of these hegemonic, I guess, sort of movements or things in our culture, like things that you would see on the news. What types of messages do you start seeing in movies? Big media, things that are controlled by money, by power. What kind of things are being pushed out by power? They represent something. There's some things getting represented in that, I think. And there's an interesting sort of social and historical theory about how horror movies represent the sort of a metaphor for whatever the pervasive social fear is at the time. Like for instance, there's one floating around out there about how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about capitalism. And I mentioned that on the show before, about the failures of capitalism and the fact that he becomes this crazy serial killer because, losing the business and et cetera, right? So that kind of thing. Looks like Superfan Chris has got something there for us. 1 second. Let me take a look. See. All right. So Superfan Chris says, I think racism takes on a different meaning now. People now dislike and hate you more based on your political preference. Oh, yeah, I think so too. I think that's where more and more we're starting to see, once we start to see a clear fracture and clear, like, movements start to form, like, to some degree on the right wing, there are some movements that are already coalescing, sort of like these militia movements, excuse me, these sort of Second Amendment pro-gun movements, constitutionalist, or even to some degree, you get your what do you call it, sovereign citizen kind of people, and that kind of thing. And they're sort of coalescing into this sort of I mean, it's not really a coalition, but in a way it is. And there's not really a counterbalance to that. I mean, I think that there's this sort of feeling that some people have, like, well, there's these crazy people on one side that are like, think that they're gonna have a revolution against the government and for Second Amendment rights and all this other stuff, and then there's just everyone else that's normal. But what might start happening is there's going to be groups of the quote unquote normal that start to lean towards supporting those factions of people, and eventually, I follow some deep left groups of people and stuff like that, and there's murmurings of the quote like leftists becoming armed and trying to find a way to counterbalance right-wing force and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of that's just as much hogwash talk as the right-wing talk, but it makes you wonder. Like, there's some theories out there that the Civil War was actually stoked by the Rothschilds. Why? Well, because it was a chance for the bank to play both sides again. So what they did was they put a lot of propaganda out to the Southern poor whites to basically to scare them about the notion of free black men roaming the land looking for their precious white women. And oh my God, right? They might look at them or something, right? Or more. And oh God, that's enough to fight a war. That for some people, right? The racism was deep. And maybe there's more motivations than that, but it was like an example. If you look at the time, I don't have any presented for you right now. But if you look, and maybe in the comments section someday, if you guys are getting bored one day and you want to look up propaganda, basically it was technically before quote unquote propaganda, the official format or form factor of manipulation was created. So it's less about doubles talk and sort of hidden agendas and stuff like that, and more direct, like pictures of like a black, caricature, like chasing a white woman or something down the cotton field or something, right? And then it would say, if they're free or something, and it's like real simple, and it's like plastered around all the fence posts and stuff like that around the town, stuff like that, and it riled them up, and then the Northerners were getting newspaper ads and flyers and different things and postings and propaganda talking about how these guys want to break up the United States, make it weaker, break up the Union. And also, maybe they were against the slave thing because it's like, hey, these guys are unfairly getting all this free labor or something like that. I don't know. There's sort of that purely economic component to it that a lot of the there's a lot of white folks that really try to dig their heels in on that side of things and negate all the other aspects. That I'm not going to argue that there wasn't an economic rationale for this. But then again, like I said, when if you're owner of a chattel slave, you got to take care of your chattel slave. If you have wage slaves working for you, if they die, you can just get another one, and there's no real loss to you. You paid them pro rata for the service they provided. And when they die, they die. You find another one until they become too expensive because they all died off. All right. So let's see what else we got going on. Now, remember, if you want to, you could always Skype in and talk about whatever you want to talk about on the show. But yeah, as we start seeing the political divide happen, I think we see this move towards socialism. of which I'm an incognito member, really. We'll see. I mean, I'm not really, what I espouse is a form of socialism, but I'm afraid of what's sort of called vanguard party socialism. It's a nice way of saying basically let the party decide what's best for things. Whew, I don't like that idea. No. To me, it has to start with labor and capital relations. Then we move on. It's a long-term strategic change, and it's not because it's actually strategic. It's just that based on human nature, we are now opening the potential for a new form of thought, a new philosophy to take hold, and by the same sort of chant. I almost say it like a chant anymore. To explain what I'm talking about is guaranteeing workers equity in the enterprises or the businesses that they help build over time, right? Plus democratic control of workplaces. So the bigger the organization, the more the workers should have control over what happens, because really, like, you have a couple people making decisions that could affect 30,000 people. Well, in the new reality, just like abolishing slavery became a new reality. Slavery was a reality. The abolition of slavery created the conditions by which it is now prohibited under threat of violence and captivity that you shall not enslave another human anymore. If you now say that we will now no longer create a wage slave situation that someone has no alternative but to enter into. Because really, when I say wage slave, a lot of people get all weirded out by that, because my job is like, I can change my job and I'm free to go if I want to or don't want to. And that's sort of true. But if you stop wanting to go at all, and you're like, you know what, I hate this idea that I'm working and someone is making money off of me, and I could be making my own money doing something, but I just don't have the resources to do it. And I don't feel like that's fair. I would rather scratch a living out of the earth than to do that, just on principle. There's no alternative. They can't just go do that. They have to go find a job and buy some land eventually or something. So even if you wanted to just escape the system, you have to buy your way out. And first, you have to be exploited to do that. If you don't have any skills, no one's going to pay you very much. So you're going to become desperate, and you're going to be able to you're going to end up taking whatever low wage job you can, and hopefully you'll build skills. But if the wage is below something that you could actually survive on and get shelter and food and hopefully reskill yourself, if you can't do those things, then eventually you just sort of die. And it's crazy. I'm part of a group on Facebook called Jack's Lawn Pros, and they're talking about someone posted somewhere on there about the $15 minimum wage proposal. And there's all these people talking about how it's going to hurt their business and all that stuff. And to me, I say minimum wage is a distraction. I say that we should guarantee workers equity in the enterprises they help build and democratic control of workplaces. If let's say you have 20,000 employees, and those 20,000 employees vote to say that the starting wage at this place is $10 an hour, then I feel like that's what it's going to be. Then that's, for whatever reason, these people have justified a $10 hour starting wage in order to be part of their organization. Which, if that's what the workers voted for, I guess I can sort of see that. But I think that in the end, they would probably want to be more equitable, but it's hard to say. So it would be interesting to see where that would go, because and you could say, well, implementing that would be pretty treacherous because you don't even know how it would go. Well, what we're doing now is going into some pretty shitty territory, and it's not uncharted. We've seen this charted already where unbridled capitalism leads to basically people dying at work and your children becoming workers, and we all become a society that basically feeds monopoly capital. Yeah, that sucks, and that goes against American norms and values and all that stuff. So, yeah. So, what can we do? How do we break the cycle of capital, basically the moneyed people that owns the businesses that employ other people? They, of course, want to reduce their labor costs, so they want to pay less, right? And so people end up earning less. And you know, there's always the push to have the populace earn less, but at the same time, you know, if people earn more, they can spend more, and they can now help, you know, feed more business. And so it becomes this contradiction. Karl Marx talks about it, etc. But anyway, there's you know, going back to the discussion about people dying because they don't have enough money to live on. That's the argument. I mean, there's people on that forum that are talking about if someone's worth $5 an hour, that's all they should get paid. And I'm like, well, how do you know what someone's worth? There's no alternative but to do that. If people could like sign up to go get like 10 acres of land to go live on that's at least somewhat fertile, or they can put a hydroponic system on that land and produce a decent yield. If there was like something where you could do that and say, you know what, fuck the rat race, I'm just going to grow some shit out in the country, and I'm just going to, you know, smoke some weed, brew some beer, learn some leather work, and maybe I'll make some shoes, and people need some shoes in my neighborhood. You know, I'll trade them some shit for some shoes. I don't fucking know. You would probably have a bunch of time to fuck off, and you're just living your life. I mean, before the invention of money, what did people do? What did you do? You were born, you eked a living on this earth the best you could. You hopefully had a bunch of kids, and some of them survived to the next generation. And yay, your DNA passed forward, and you have accomplished what you were supposed to accomplish for that period of time. And if you believe in shared consciousness or spirituality or whatever, we now take over with your, you know, thought process in that realm, I guess. But anyway, what do we do? You know, it's not always about the money, and we have the hegemony, or the hegemonic nature of this sort of pervasive idea that anything you do has to be worth some money, that your life is dedicated to making money. It can be distilled in your value, the value of your worth, whether or not you live. You know, this person on the forum admitted that you can't live on $5 an hour, yet still said, if you're only worth $5 an hour, that's what you should get paid. So in essence, if you are worth $5 an hour per the captive marketplace, then you basically deserve to die. You know, and that's, you know, I'm like, that's why I'm not really like a vocal member, quote unquote, of some socialist movement, but I'll get on there and troll these comments saying like, well, you know, you are basically saying, you've on one hand said that you can't live off $5 an hour, but on the other hand, you say if they're worth $5 an hour, that's all they should get paid. That's all they deserve to get paid. So you said they can't live on $5 an hour, but they deserve to receive $5 an hour. So you are saying by proxy, they don't deserve to live, right? And I said, why does Russia or China or anyone or any of our perceived enemies have to worry about this country when our own countrymen will literally justify the death and eventual slow starvation of their own countrymen if the market deemed their worth was not worth a survival wage? In a market where people don't have a choice but to seek a wage. You don't get to go just live off the land, even if you want to. You have to go buy it. If there was I mean, what if we brought back, well, of course you have to work and buy it. Well, no, there's other ways. Why don't we bring back the way that the land was accumulated in the first place? How was it acquired in the first place? Just keep going further and further back. Someone bought this land, someone bought that land, someone did this, someone did that, and all the way back into the 1400s, into the late 1300s. Who owned the land? Where did it come from? Right? What if we went back to that time? Now, I don't need money. I can use a different kind of power, right? What if I can get a lot more thuggish friends faster than you can buy them? And now we want to take over your shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to do work. And now, the legal structure has been put in place so you can't just go gank somebody's shit. But I'm saying that the justifications, it sort of nullifies the justifications that some of these people put on why things are the way they are, why it's okay for the pressures of capitalism to allow somebody to be paid below a wage that will allow them to live on. And what if you have a welfare program? So now you're saying, hey, for the sake of my profit, I'm going to pay so little that the government now has to support this person because they can't live without it. So how freaking weird. You try to make more money by paying less so that you can pay higher taxes to pay for the government program that is paying for the fact that you pay so little that these people qualify for state assistance. You see, it's like a weird circle, and yet somehow capitalism is the most efficient way of doing things. I don't know. By what I'm describing, by simply changing the relationship, just like we changed the relationship. So changing the relationship between capital and labor, in a way, is just like changing the relationship between capital and labor with slavery, right? Slavery, we just simply, as a cultural shift, said you are not allowed to do this. No, culture said that. Now, the money economic aspect came, whether or not it was profitable ended up not mattering at the end of the day. Eventually, even if it somehow still made economic sense and all of these things, which it does in some cases, I guess, because so in other words, otherwise you wouldn't have chattel slavery still existing in the world. But anyway, damn it, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, just like abolishing chattel slavery was a cultural shift that changed the relationship between what capital could do to labor and how it could buy labor. So now, instead of buying the whole person, you buy them piecemeal, hour at a time, week at a time, job at a time, bits and pieces at a time. You lease them instead. And so, as Frederick Douglass says, there's a slavery of wages that's only a little less galling than chattel slavery that must be abolished or must be ended with the other. They must both be ended together. So socialism doesn't mean that the government runs shit. It doesn't mean that the government owns it or you have to do what the government says. It doesn't mean that. It means democratic control of workplaces. Basically, the more people that are working in your organization, the less, really, at the end of the day, the less contribution the owners are making. Almost by definition, as it grows and grows, the owner can only contribute so much. Otherwise, why are they growing? Then otherwise, the owner could just handle it. They need those people in order to grow. You see, And that's something that I think our society seems to forget, because the hegemonic or the hegemony is in favor of capital, in favor of the money. But yeah, it was disheartening to see that. But I'll jump on and I'll troll them a little bit and put my point across. And they don't have any good rebuttals. I keep waiting, and almost I see these responses on Facebook sometimes, and I'm like, man, I get these notifications. I'm like, I wonder if maybe this time there's going to be this rebuttal and it's going to be locked down, and I'm like going to look so silly, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm purposely challenging my assertions, is why. If I need to be able to defend my position, so I'm purposely putting them in the ring and picking fights with people who are so proud, so proud of sticking their chest out, rooster cock, like, oh, look at my look at my position on the economy and this and that. I'm like, well, dude, no. Hold on, son. Let's check this out. Now, sometimes I risk being the same way, but whatever. I have yet to be broken down by these people. And I almost want to fluff my chest. I'm like, yeah, what? I'm picking the fights. And I don't even know why I'm nervous anymore. It's just getting boring. It's boring seeing the same old shit over and over again coming out of these people. They just don't really think about shit very deeply. You know what it is? The rampant, what do you call it? Similarity that I've seen. There's something that sort of is pervasive among these people, is that either they've made it themselves, or they never had to make it, and they just popped out of the womb and they already had the silver spoon in the mouth. Because some of these people might have come from zero and then they made it, and then they just think everybody can, and they don't realize maybe they're sort of special. Because I'll tell you, there are some people, and I'm not trying to be mean, but there's some people that will tell me and admit to me that they would never be able to run a business. It's just not in them to do it. It's not something, they have zero inkling on how to do it. They have zero desire to learn. They would much rather just have a job, do their job, or maybe climb up the ranks, but they don't want to run shit. They just want to do a thing, right? It's fine by them. That should be fine. Nobody should be basically given a death sentence because they're not entrepreneurial enough to escape their death sentence. That's basically what we're saying. If the minimum wage is not either, if you don't want to give a minimum wage, then you have to institute a guarantee of equity in businesses, and especially of large businesses, and guarantee equity in it, and also democratic control of workplaces. Otherwise, then you need to just start raising the minimum wage. Because why? Because you have to make up for the fact that it's captive work population, that there's no alternative. They can't just go live off the land. It's all government land that you're not allowed to live on, or it's private property that you can't just go pitch your tent on. And and when they just say, well, just go start your own business. Well, if you don't have resources, you can't do that. And some people start businesses without resources. Well, that's great because they're smart and cunning and all these things. Not everybody is. And we can't forget something called efficient markets theory. What is efficient markets theory? It's basically saying that the markets, the beloved markets that are moved by supply and demand, are efficient, meaning that information that can be known is known, and decisions are being made off that information in real time. So, in other words, you will never find $100 bill while walking on the sidewalk, because the $100 bill will be efficiently found and gone. So whatever deal you find, it's going to be gone. Because if the deal is good enough of a deal that it demands, that it creates a demand, those that were giving the deal, what incentive do they have not to raise the prices, knowing that they could probably still raise prices and still sell this stuff, right? etc. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Don't know. So let's see what's going on the chat lines. Not really a whole lot. Some folks joining in on the Facebook feed. Thanks for joining in. We just got through talking about a few sort of deep topics, but labor and capital relations, and then responding to reparations comment. We talked about that last week. But if you have something on your mind, or if you have an opinion about what we talked about tonight, please dump it down into the comment section, and let's discuss. Let us discuss. And yeah. So anyway, been seeing these responses on the Jack's Lawn Pro thing, and I'm like, man, do I even want to read these things? It's probably gonna be the same shit that I've always seen. And like I said, I got to spread the good word. I got to undo the propaganda that everyone's been fed during the McCarthy era. We have a neo-McCarthy era. We have, I mean, just things are just crazy right now. A lot of propaganda going on. People with money, the moneyed interests are pushing this propaganda. They have identified themselves. It is now part of their identity to be against anything that sounds like what I just, espout or what I suggested. So, there's going to definitely be some resistance out there. Definitely going to be resistance. But any hegemony, etc., or a hegemonic force, or hegemon, excuse me, also can be defeated in time. And so what is that? If racism is the hegemonic force, then in time that gets defeated. If a certain empire is the hegemonic force, like the Roman Empire was a hegemony in the region, in a large region, right? It was, all over the place. Or let's say Genghis Khan, that whole era, there was a hegemonic situation there. Etc. Right? And white supremacy, all of that having a hegemonic hold on the society. But all right. So anyway, that's what I got to say about stuff today. Unless we got some comments coming in, I want to say thank you to Superfan Chris and Superfan Mike for jumping in on the show. We've got a couple folks joining in on Facebook. Put something in the comments section, join in, or there's even a Skype link. You can Skype in. I will answer the Skype. You can be on the show, give your 2 cents. You can take the answer on or off the show. You want to get into debate, go ahead and do it, but you better do it fast, because I'm probably going to sign off the air here pretty soon. So let's see what other comments or questions we have. Now, if you're new to the Boyd, because we do have a couple people joining in every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, I do a new episode. And if you want to talk about something specific, something on your mind, something you want to see a new perspective on, or whatever, I don't know, just send me a message. You can comment on whatever you're watching, either if you're watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube. Leave a comment and let me know what's on your mind, and we can discuss that. And nothing's off limits. The more controversial, the better, because sometimes, what does that mean? A lot of times that means that these topics are not really being broached with honesty. And this particular show is a fellowship of honesty. If it's anything, that's what it is. All right. So that, unless I see some stuff popping up here in the next little bit, this is going to conclude today's episode of The Boyd. Unless, like I said, we get some comments here. Oh, but you hear the music. Must mean the end of another episode of The Boyd. So tune in next week. Again, if you want to give me a topic to discuss, hit me up on comments, or let me turn that down. The comments, or you can email me, whatever. Get in touch with me. If you want to be on the show, you want me to interview you, you have something to talk about, you have a cause you're championing, then come on the show, and I'll ask you a little bit about yourself, and I will then ask you about your cause. However, just be warned that if I have questions about whatever your cause is, if I have critical thoughts on it, I will let them be known. So just know that if you raise your hand to be on the show, and this is not necessarily a free pass to just say whatever you want, because if it doesn't make sense, I might be like, it doesn't make sense to me. Please explain some more. All right. So, and for those of you that were wondering, yes, so some of you guys might be wondering what was in the cup and why was James drinking it throughout the night. Well, first of all, I got to drink something, and tonight it is wine in the coffee cup. So that is the mystery solved. There you go. Wine in the coffee cup. Maybe that'll be a thing. Mystery drinking in the coffee cup. All right, so another episode of The Boyd. Please like, subscribe, share. We need to get some more viewership. We always like to see some different opinions. Want to get a debate going or something like that. I mean, even though I didn't agree with this dude's comment, I do thank him for even spending the time to write the diatribe out and whatnot. But again, thanks for tuning into The Boyd, and just want to wish you a good night, and until next week, peace.